Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to be going over the purpose of filters in landscape photography, covering the different types of systems you might encounter, and going to discuss which system is right for you while reviewing this particular kit that NiSi sent me, that I'm actually going to be giving away sometime during this video. So stay tuned. My goal for this video is to blend a bit of education within the review so that it offers something for everyone. As I mentioned before, I'll be reviewing the NiSi V7 True to Life color filter system that they sent me. For transparency, this is a paid review, and while this might turn a few people away, I have strict guidelines for accepting compensation for a review like this. First, I make it clear to them that I'm allowed to say whatever I truly believe about the product without any review from them, NiSi. I only accept products that I'd actually purchase myself, and I try to approach every review as if I bought the item myself, regardless of how I got it. It's entirely possible by the end of this that NiSi will never want to work with me again, and that's totally okay with me as long as I remain honest to you and myself. So, with that out of the way, what do you need filters for? Why do some of your favorite photographers use them and others don't? What's right for you? Let's start by answering why you use filters in landscape photography. There are two main reasons to use filters in your work: to create movement in your images by manipulating the shutter speed, think moving water or clouds in a scene, and to manipulate the physics of light that hits your lens, which is just a fancy way of describing the purpose of a polarizer, which is to cut out reflections of light on your subject or in the atmosphere. The last thing filters can do is manipulate the exposure in specific areas of your image, which is something that you can do with a graduated filter that darkens the edge of your frame and gradually gets lighter as it gets closer to the middle of the frame. Other filters like this exist to add things like mist or special effects to your images, but I don't even really consider those options, but they do exist. Almost every landscape photographer I know uses filters in some capacity, but many have wide varying opinions on what system they actually prefer. So let's talk about that really quick. There's basically two types of filters: circular ones like this, or square ones that require a holder or system like this NiSi. Let's break down what that holder system actually does. Unlike circular filters that simply screw on to the end of your lenses, these systems use square pieces of glass that need to be held on using a filter holder like this one. There are a ton of options out there for kits. The two that I have here that I'm going to use in the review are the NiSi V7, like I said, and a first-gen 𝐒𝐚𝐥𝐬 camera system. These are the only filter systems I have personal experience with, but most of these work under the same principle, typically housing a polarizer and then containing 2 to 3 slots to drop in square filters into, like this. Many photographers argue that a few of these justifications are obsolete in modern photography. As I said above, using a graduated filter is one of the specialties of these kits, but with modern cameras having larger dynamic ranges than ever before, combined with using techniques like exposure bracketing, you can get away without one. On top of that, magnetic circular filters like these have become much more popular and allow you to stack neutral density filters much easier than ever before. The truth is, most of the time, I don't want to use a filter at all if I can get away with it. And if a scene does need a filter, I want to take as little time as possible. Like many tools in photography, if it feels like it gets in the way more than it benefits me, I'm probably just never going to end up using it. So if all of this is true, why do I still own a kit? Well, I own a kit for the same reason people continue to shoot film photography. It slows me down. It makes me more deliberate in some of my compositions, and it feels like it connects me a bit more with the process of photography. So when I have the time and there's a reason to use an ND stacked with a polarizer or a graduated filter might be helpful for balancing my sky, it's there if I need it. Just because modern editing and technology have made a graduated filter less important doesn't mean I wouldn't prefer to get it all in one exposure. And like I said before, it really does have a leg up when it comes to worrying about vignetting on those super wide angle lenses. These do come at a cost though, and that is space, weight, and as I already mentioned, setup time. Take a look at what I have to carry around for my 𝐒𝐚𝐥𝐬 system. The NiSi system fits all within this case, and it holds more filters than I could ever actually need, which is great. It's a much smaller footprint in comparison to my current system. However, compare both of those to just having a magnetic circular polarizer and an ND filter, which you could easily stack 2 more NDs if you needed to, and they would barely take up any space or weight. Setup time is massively different between a square system and these magnetic filters, and if you're someone who's always on the move, shooting multiple scenes as the light is changing, or simply never feels like they have the time to set up, I definitely wouldn't recommend using a filter holder system. But if you have a bit of extra space in your bag and you find yourself with time to set up often, then a kit might be great for your work. The NiSi system has a few things that I like about it over my 𝐒𝐚𝐥𝐬 camera that I've been using for several years. First of all, my wine country camera requires me to put this big step-up ring on my lenses and then attach the entire system to use just the polarizer, even if I don't want to use the actual filters. With the NiSi, I can use the polarizer independently from the rest of the system because the mounting ring to attach it to my camera is integrated with the polarizer. This is pretty sweet. Then I can add the square filters holder onto it if I want to use those square filters. NiSi even provides a rubber lens cap for the polarizer, so you can leave it attached for quick access and just throw it in your bag. This is great in theory, but I ran into two small issues that I wanted to bring up. First, the cap can be a huge pain in the butt to remove depending on the temperature outside. Something I'd likely get better at with over time, but I felt like I was going to break my lens off of my camera the first time I did this. Secondly, with my current bag setup, I can't actually fit my camera in the bag with the system attached anyways, but this is something you could easily configure your bag to fix, which if I was going to continue using the system, I would definitely do. This is just something to keep in mind. The build quality is great overall, being made mostly of metal besides spots that require plastic or resin, such as where the glass filters slide in. The locking mechanism to keep the square filter secure is accessible with gloves, which is highly important for me. And by design, you can visibly see if it is locked or not, which is absolutely great. The polarizer is somewhat easy to add and remove, and all you have to do is twist the polarizer on or off to secure it. It is quite secure when it's twisted on there, but there is technically nothing locking it in. However, if you have the filter holders attached in front of it, it can't possibly fall off accidentally. You can rotate the polarizer with these turn wheels in any configuration, and it does work with gloves on. NiSi sent me 3 different filters, a 6-stop ND, a 10-stop ND, and a 3-stop soft grad filter. They all come individually packed in their own leather pouch, which is great, but I honestly wish there was a more sustainable option considering these filters are going to immediately end up in my filter case, and I'll never use these leather cases again. The square ND filters have soft foam gaskets to help prevent light leak and add a little cushion between each stacked filter. One of the most important qualities you should look for when you're buying filters, regardless of what you need, is how they might affect your image. At this point, most reputable companies that aren't budget options have high quality glass. So you likely can't go wrong, but just keep in mind, if you're gonna spend $2,000 on a lens and $4,000 on a camera and then put a $20 piece of glass in front of it all, you might end up with bad results because you typically get what you pay for. Thankfully, none of the filters I'll be using today would be considered budget options, so that shouldn't be a concern. If you've never used filters before, the first thing to do is just make sure they don't degrade the sharpness in your image, which typically means the glass is high quality. Secondly, the stronger your light degradation is, i.e. the more stops of light you're blocking, the higher chance there will be to color cast on your final image. NiSi's new filters claim true to life color, which I'd like to put to the test. So I'm going to take some photos, not right now because there's no clouds in the sky, and we're going to jump into Lightroom and compare those results. How's it going, everyone? I finally got some clouds here out in the desert after waiting almost a week, so I was pretty stoked about that. And we're going to be testing the 6-stop ND from NiSi and the polarizer to the other stuff I own. So let's look at those really quick. On the left, we have our control, which is no filter. On the right, we have the 6-stop ND. I'm going to scroll through really quick to give you an idea of what the other NDs look like. Here's the Wine Country 6-stop. You can tell it's a slight more green cast rather than magenta. And then finally, I have my Freewell Magnetic 5-stop ND. Keep in mind, this is not 6 stops. It's just the one I own, so the exposure is a little bit different. And you can expect that the higher ND, the more the color cast. So this one's going to have just a little bit less color cast than the 6-stop would in the same brand. But the biggest thing you're going to notice is there's kind of a purple tint / magenta cast on the NiSi. It's not very much. It's very subtle. It's very normal at 6 stops and almost every brand. So if we compare the NiSi now on the left to the Wine Country camera, you're going to notice this one is going to be slightly more magenta and the Wine Country is slightly greener. Now, if we compare the NiSi to the Freewell actually looks a little bit green, but it probably has the least cast out of all of them. However, the thing that's most important when you're looking at this is that you can balance the entire image. So the most important thing is you're going to get a color cast no matter what ND brand you're using. It's how strong it is, but also if you can fix that in post. And that just means that the color cast is even throughout the image. And when I look at the NiSi here, it is pretty even from left to right all the way in the sky here. That's really where you're looking, but you can also see a little bit of color cast on the hillside. Okay, so that's the ND. Looks pretty good to my eye. I wouldn't necessarily say it is absolutely perfect, as in you can't tell the difference between the two. Like I said, you can look at these and see a slight color cast, but this is fully what I expected. It's actually a little bit better than what I expected. I think it actually looks a little bit better than my Wine Country camera in terms of the amount of cast. And like I said, this is an amount you could easily fix in post. So let's take a look at the polarizer. So on the left, we have no polarizer, and on the right, we have the polarizer from NiSi all the way on, and then we have it all the way off. So I'm going to look at the off. You're going to kind of notice there's basically no cast. There's a tiny bit of a magenta cast. Also, the exposure is going to be slightly darker, but it looks pretty good to my eye. And this looks really good as well when you have the polarizer all the way on. Again, there's no cast in the image. Looks pretty good to me. Let's take a look at the polarizer all the way on the NiSi versus the polarizer all the way on the Wine Country camera. Wine Country camera has slightly more polarization and is a little bit darker, but no cast on either of those. Again, I think we're seeing a little bit more green in the Wine Country camera and maybe a tad, just a touch of magenta on the NiSi polarizer. Let's take a look at the polarizer from the Freewell. This one is probably the most balanced, but realistically, there's barely a noticeable difference when the polarizer is fully on, which is going to be the most extreme. There's a little bit of cast, but it's super minimal, I think, overall. Really high quality, exactly what I expected, maybe even better than what I expected. So I hope that helps you decide. Okay, so I want to give this system away to one of you lovely people since I'm not going to be using it in my own kit. If you want to win the NiSi filter system, all you need to do is be subscribed to the channel and comment down below what you'd use a filter system for. I'm going to pick a winner in 3 weeks from the release of this video, and that's it. The NiSi system is solid overall, but I won't be making the switch to it. My biggest complaint with most filter systems like this is how you interface when you're using your filters. Have you noticed that all the filters on my Wine Country camera use a little holder, that little plastic thing surrounding the filters? This means I never have to directly touch a piece of glass in handling. It adds a layer of protection in the event of dropping one of them. It also makes holding and handling the glass much easier, which lessens the chance of a drop as well. Lastly, and most importantly, it is so much easier to slide filters in and out of this system. I cannot stress this point enough. Many times when I'm using square filters like this, I'll have compositions locked in and I'll be taking exposures as I plan to blend them together from several minutes apart as the light fades on my scene. This requires me to remove an ND filter in between taking exposures because I've lost that much light. I actually did exactly this in a recent video from Iceland if you're curious. This would be impossible to do on the NiSi system without shifting my composition because the design of these systems uses friction to hold onto each piece of glass. This isn't really a fault of the NiSi system specifically. The majority of all square filter systems use this same wedge friction design that makes adding, removing, or adjusting glass within the holder kind of a pain to use and moves your lens around in between changes. This specific scenario is why I use the Wine Country camera system, even though it's clearly much bulkier than most of the other systems out there. Overall, I think the NiSi system is high quality, a great value, and a much smaller footprint than my current setup. The glass performed even better than I expected, and the polarizer integration is super convenient. It just doesn't fit my specific needs for what I want out of a kit, which is the last topic at hand. What is right for you? Everyone's situation is different. Take me, for example. If I needed a filter system that allowed me to use the polarizer easily, then the NiSi would be hands down a choice over my Wine Country camera system. However, because I always have a magnetic polarizer on me, that's not a feature that really benefits me. If you live somewhere with a lot of waterfalls or seascapes, you might need more ND options than I typically get away with. And even though I made it a point that many photographers recommend just bracketing your exposures so you don't have to use graduated filters anymore, what if you aren't comfortable with those editing techniques yet? Or maybe you want to challenge yourself and get everything in a single exposure, then graduated filters become much more important to you. Realistically, the best thing I can do is just show you how these systems work, what they are for, and let you decide what is best for you. So if you're sitting there feeling a bit lost with all this information and you want just my honest recommendation on where to start, just get a circular magnetic polarizer. That's all you really need. And it's so easy to manage, you'll never find yourself missing a shot because of it. If you do shoot scenes with water often, maybe just throw a magnetic 6-stop ND into your kit and you'll cover most of your bases. These will never go to waste. No matter what system you end up choosing or however you develop in photography, you'll probably use these for a very long time. So that about wraps up this video. I hope it was educational and informative. Thank you for all the support recently, and I can't wait to get back on the road. I'll see you next week. Good luck in the contest. Later.